How's it going, everybody? And before I begin, I just want to let you know that I am streaming more on YouTube itself on my channel, and if you don't want to miss any of it, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. So today, what we're going to be doing is trying to take one of the most necessary skills in Valorant, Crosshair Placement, and try to condense it into the simplest thing that I can do. From there, I might just try and further explain some of the finer points of it, but the goal is to try and stay as simple as possible. So let's jump right into that. The simplest way one can explain crosshair placement is that all it is when trying to peek corners, take aim duels, or clear areas, the goal is to move your crosshair as little as possible. And that's it. The essence of crosshair placement is just that. Now to explain what that is, here I'm in a match, and as you can see, I'm about to peek into mid area on Haven. Now watch how I peek into mid, but before I ever show myself, my crosshair is already where I think the enemy will be. That is truly the main idea of what crosshair placement is, trying to minimize the amount of time you have to flick to the enemy. Now, of course, in this very simple statement, there is a whole world of complexity. And so now we will look at some of the finer points of that complexity. In order to understand what the details of crosshair placement are, let's look at what to me are the 5 points of an aim duel. Basically, the minimum amount of events that occur when an aim duel is fought on Valorant. The very first thing that happens is finding the enemy. This is the point where your eyes scan the area and that you have just peeked or someone has peeked and your eyes try and lock onto the enemy. Next, what must happen is for at least one of you to try and stop moving. At least one of you will stop moving, whether it's you or them, doesn't really matter. It just technically makes it a little faster for one person. Next and most important step that has to do with crosshair placement is the flick itself. Both players will then try and place their crosshair over the other person, preferably over their head. These first 3 steps will all essentially occur in probably less than a second. Next, well, there's really only one thing left: pull the trigger. Whoever can complete these 3 steps faster with more accuracy is most likely the one to win the aim duel. After this step, step 5 would be just to control the recoil. Ultimately, aim dueling can be a whole video on its own, but today we will focus on step number 3, placing your crosshair on the enemy. Now this event is step 3, but it really should have occurred far before step 1. The reason for this is that this event, where you do that flick onto the enemy, is where your aim comes into play. Now aim is actually a little bit different from crosshair placement, which I will actually get into a little bit later, why the difference is. But basically how accurate and how quick you can do this with your aim dictates what happens during this event. However, crosshair placement is the ability to make this millisecond process as easy as possible. As I said earlier, all crosshair placement is trying to move your crosshair as little as possible. This is where this statement comes in. If you reduce the amount of time you have to flick to the enemy, or if your crosshair is already on the enemy, you can thus eliminate an entire step on an aim duel process, giving you a much, much higher chance of winning that aim duel. Now before we can get into some of the physical examples of this, I want to explain what I said earlier regarding aim and crosshair placement. A lot of people who play Valorant confuse what aim is and what crosshair placement is. Aim has more to do with your reaction time, ability to flick, and your muscle memory. However, crosshair placement has much more to do with your map knowledge, your game sense, and your awareness, and finally, the only part that really overlaps, your reflexes. The reason for this is that your aim doesn't dictate how good your crosshair placement is. In fact, it's the complete other way around. Your crosshair placement shows how easy you're making it on your aim. Alright, and so now we are actually in the game live, as you could say. I'm sort of going to recreate or give you some examples of what I did or what I showed in the video. Now here I'm actually going to recreate that first example that I showed where I was peeking at mid. Actually, let me change my crosshair. I don't know why it changed like that, but essentially, like I said earlier, I want to try to keep my crosshair on the enemy before I even see them. I'm sort of predicting where they're going to be and thus sort of not have to move it as much. Now this is what I did. Essentially, if you actually roll back the footage, you'll be able to see that I actually turned into this area right here and then I peeked. And essentially the sage, I believe, was actually right there. That is sort of the essence of what crosshair placement is. Again, I had to keep my crosshair placement on the person before I ever saw it, and thus I had to minimize the amount of flick time I had. And then actually I sort of back up because I did get flash, and then again I move my crosshair up to window and then I peek and I was already on the person. I had eliminated that step of moving or flicking. Then I could just shoot and I very easily won that aim duel. Now that is what the essence of good crosshair placement is. Again, just to really hammer that home, putting your crosshair placement, or putting your crosshair where you think the enemy is going to be, and thus minimizing the time you have to flick. And so now one last sort of very interesting example, one little bit of a different type of example in doing crosshair placement is actually when you aren't the one peeking, because I think that's sort of the one that sort of gets left behind. Now, ultimately, if you want to see really good crosshair placement when you're not peeking at all, go look at Shroud's videos. He has by far, the best crosshair placement he had in CS. You should go watch his videos. But essentially, what he does is, and I see this big mistake all the time, is that when you're sort of just, let's say, just watching this angle on long, they put their crosshair right there. That, even though they are probably going to peek it, that area is, in a lot of ways, just plain wrong. Nobody is going to try and peek an angle like this, as close to the wall as they can. At least they might try. They might try to do that, but most of the time people are going to do that. Maybe even wide swing. And so actually you're going to try to compensate for that with your crosshair placement. And actually a little bit of sort of enemy knowledge sort of goes into this. Are they peeking wide? Are they peeking close? Just as the rounds go along, try to, put a little sort of point and remember what they're doing. Again, if they're peeking really that short, you might want to put it that short. If they're peeking nice and wide, then you got to put it a little bit wider. But that's what crosshair placement when you're getting peeked is. Sort of, again, minimizing or at least eliminating that step 3. And really, that's all there is to it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you enjoyed it, please leave a like. I always appreciate that. And like I said, if you want to catch more of my live streams or more of my videos, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything. Thanks again, and I will see you next time.